Hey, everybody, welcome to tonight's Late Night Happy Hour. Brian Kamenetzky and Andy Kamenetzky coming to you on Thursday night. We are anticipating shortly the arrival of Michael Lee, great writer. He's the sports enterprise sports writer, I should say, at the Washington Post. Years of covering the NBA, but the guy can write about anything and everything and does a spectacular job. So we're excited to get him on. And he's staying up late with us tonight. We compromised a little bit, Andy.
Yeah, that's true. He similar. We're going to get into Meyers Leonard. There's a collective bargaining agreement that determines the punishment of different players. Meyers Leonard's punishment went down today. Going to talk about that, but there was bargaining going back and forth between us and Michael Lee. We wanted to have Michael Lee on. He is, though, on the East Coast, so we bargained down the time an hour early. We would not do that for most guests, even East Coasters, but Michael Lee is our guy.
Certainly not for that Howard Beck.
Oh God, geez.
Not for that guy.
Don't get me started on Beck.
So we got a lot of stuff we want to cover with Michael. Great exchange this morning. For people who don't remember, today is the anniversary. What year anniversary of the Eddie Jones trade?
It is the
22nd. 22nd or 20, something like that.
It happened in 1999. So I think the 22nd.
22nd. It's not a thing that that they have like an anniversary commemorative for.
21st. Actually,
Okay.
If it was in 1999, it's 2001. No, 22nd. Right the first time. 22nd.
Go with your gut. What is the 22nd? 22nd anniversary is like potted plants or something. I'm not sure what that is, but a really fun exchange this morning based on that conversation that happened on Twitter, which we'll talk about because the trade of Eddie Jones brings up a surprising amount of stuff. So we'll do that. We'll talk about Meyers Leonard over the course of the show. The Brooklyn Nets continue to make Andy look stupid, which that's always something that I like talking about. Patrick Ewing is angry, and Andy LeBron
chewing people out right now.
That's right. LeBron James has said it's go time.
He did said that today yes. Before practice, the first practice since the All-Star break. For the Lakers, LeBron addressed the media, and he said he's not taking time off. He is not going to be looking to rest at all, even though the schedule is going to become even more compact and more hairy. Because
8 back-to-backs, I think the Lakers play in the second half.
Yes, they do. They have 4 in the last month of the season. They have 4 back-to-backs. That anybody who says that the league always wants the Lakers to win, it's true. But they are hiding it well with this particular schedule because that schedule does them no favors whatsoever.
But I just wonder, no, it doesn't. So take that, Donovan Mitchell, kiss it, Rudy Gobert. But I am, first of all, I'm not buying that he's not going to take any rest. If they have 4 back-to-backs in the way you're talking about, 8 overall in the second half of the season, and this doesn't account for any, the Lakers, I think, are they the only team left that hasn't had a game postponed for any reason? They're one of, I think, 2 at the most.
I was going to say, I don't know if they are the only one, but I do know they are among a handful.
Right.
Yeah, so they've actually been pretty, all things being equal, they've actually been pretty unaffected by protocols and, players missing games and stuff like that. They've had a few guys in and out. Marc Gasol is not going to be available for tomorrow's game. He's still in the protocol, and Caruso earlier. But for the most part, they have, knock on wood, managed to stay relatively disentangled from that stuff.
Yeah, it's it is kind of remarkable. It's also it's a testament to a couple things. It's vigilance. It's clearly guys and leadership taking this very seriously. They're doing a good job around the facility. Their families are doing a good job. Everybody is doing this. It's also very lucky. Because a lot of time, there are a lot of teams that have been pretty successful too in avoiding avoiding people that have COVID, of staying safe, or however you want to phrase it, but they run into the wrong team at the wrong day on the schedule, and all of a sudden they're not playing. And so the Lakers haven't had that either. So that part's worked out really well for them. Are you concerned at all, though, that when LeBron says, it's 4th gear now, 5th and 6th, and then by 7th gear is the playoffs, that reaching those top gears is going to be a little harder for him this year?
First of all, I'm concerned that LeBron has never been in a sports car like that isn't automatic. Like there's no such thing as a seventh gear, like a
I
sixth
thought like
gear.
the really, really souped up ones might have a seventh gear. Like these go to 11.
I don't think anything goes past 6. I may be wrong. I mean, those are cars well above my station, but I don't actually think there is such a thing as a 7th gear, unless he's counting like reverse as one of the gears. But I wouldn't want LeBron reversing in this analogy anyway. Am I concerned? Yes, I am, because LeBron, I don't care what he says, has clearly been tired over the last month and change of the season. And he was the one guy on this team that needed to rest with no obligations, nowhere he has to be, no time on a basketball court more than anybody. And he's the one guy that didn't get it. I mean, even taking into account, he only played 13 minutes in the All-Star game. It's not even
go. He's still the
right,
go.
Exactly. He still was not allowed to completely unplug.
And it's not even just that. It's not even just Andy too that he was not allowed to rest. Like it's not that, you know, if things had just stayed as they were, it would have been better. Like he spent the month cranking it up. It wasn't the you know, the stuff he was doing at the beginning of the season where, yeah, he's on the floor. Yeah, he's playing every game, but he's only really putting out effort for maybe 15 minutes a night, and he's playing 30. This was 38 minutes a night, including some overtimes and all that. And it was hard. And they're going to have to give him, he's going to have to take some time in the second half and skip games and sit out and not play back-to-backs. I mean, I understand, you know, he did it going into the break. There's no reason not to down the stretch. And I think he will, right? I mean, short of these being games the Lakers have to win for whatever reason, he will take that time.
Here's what I think it is. I think a lot of this has to do with semantics to some degree. Like there's a difference between taking a game off for pure rest versus taking a game off because there's really no reason for you to be playing in it. Like, for example, we saw LeBron take that last game off against Sacramento right before the All-Star game because half of the team was going to be gone anyway. There was no point to LeBron playing in that game and truly having to bust his ass in order to get the Lakers through it. Like that just was silly on the second end of a back-to-back. So that's one of those times where...
Sorry, can I confess to something?
Sure.
I don't remember if they won that game or not. Like
Sacramento, they lost.
Did they lose?
Yeah, they did lose that game.
Okay. I have no memory of what happened in that game. Like none.
Okay. I mean, I'm just telling you, they lost.
No, I believe you. I'm just like that's sort of how, like, once to your point that nobody was playing in that game, everybody was missing, and there was no reason for him to play in it. I don't even remember who won. It was less than a week ago, or basically a week ago.
Yeah, I mean, look, this whole season has been an absolute blur, and it's been that way for, you know, the people who cover it, the people playing, the referees. I think that's one of the big reasons we're getting all these texts and stuff needs to get reviewed all the time and calls are getting wrong. They're as cranky and tired as everybody else. And this season's been a slog, man. Like it's been a joyless season for everybody involved. And I think it's just one of those, you know, deals with the devil that you make in order to get the regular season calendar back on track, you know, stuff like that, the things that they're looking to try to do. And this was the only way to get themselves back on that calendar and try to preserve as much of the money as they lost last season. So it's a messy situation. And, you know, for a guy like LeBron, who has more mileage than anybody in the league, it is a particularly messy thing that you have to monitor. But yeah, everybody involved is going to do their best.
Kuz at media availability kind of alluded to some of that too. Like he was like, you know, everybody needed a break. And that, I mean, I'm assuming that includes LeBron, you know, the mental, spiritual, physical, all of it. Like they needed a break for all of it. You know, LeBron for all of his talk about like no, he knows exactly how many days he was in the bubble. He knows exactly how many days he had in the offseason. All of this stuff that LeBron's been very firm about. He also is one of the only guys who doesn't like to talk about sort of the general vulnerability of, yeah, I'm tired, we're tired, it's hard, it's his thing is on this issue, to me at least, he's always very consistently, this is what it is. We're moving forward. This is how I am. I'm not, I don't need it. I'm fine. I take naps. I'm good to go. Everybody else, though, is pretty candid about what's been going on and how even Alex Caruso is 27 years old, just turned 27. He's a pretty young guy. And he talked about how badly he needed to skip the dunk contest because he's like, I'm too tired. I'm too tired to do that.
Well, I mean, here's the thing that's interesting about that. And, Anthony Davis is a bit of an extreme example because it's become apparent that he had stuff physically bothering him. And, the Lakers have been super cautious with this situation. He's not going to be available for tomorrow's game against Indiana, but he's going to be reevaluated and hopefully back relatively soon.
3 weeks was today. So 4 weeks would be sometime next week if that timeline holds.
But, there had been an expectation heading into this season, and you and I were two people who actually bought into that narrative, that LeBron would be the one dialing it back out of necessity. And AD, even though he's had dings along the way, is younger and played in a way that he would want to really build momentum towards. Like there had been talk about him potentially being in the conversation for MVP, and that he would really be the one in a lot of ways carrying the load more than anybody else in terms of what felt most taxing. But as it turned out with AD, I think he actually needed to adjust more to a late playoff. He had never been on this deep of a playoff run. And then this type of turnaround than LeBron. I mean, LeBron's gassed, but he's experienced with this sort of thing. And a lot of guys on the team aren't. Mm-hmm. And I think in some ways, I think everybody's tired, but I think it actually shows in certain ways in terms of pure experience with the other guys versus LeBron.
Yeah. And some of it, I think it just gets to LeBron is like, I've said this before and I mean it, like when you get close to these guys, when you watch them play, when you have a chance to sit courtside and you see them practice or whatever it is, when you get to be, we're lucky. We get to be on the field for NFL games sometimes, standing in the end zone at the Coliseum and waiting, for the guy. Like when you get that close, you realize that the people who play at this level are a different species than the rest of us. It's like technically we're the same, but we're really not. LeBron is different than all of them too. Like LeBron is a different species than those guys. And so I think some of it just is, like he does his body, he takes incredible care of it. But I also think too, his body just responds differently to some of this stuff. Like he is legitimately genetically touched in a way that even professional athletes aren't. And then you combine that, Andy, with the discipline that he has and all the other stuff.
And the maintenance. I mean, the $1 million a year on maintenance, that most players, even these guys, don't necessarily have that type of disposable cash, but also the true discipline.
I was about to ask you though, like, given how much money he makes, is $1 million a year that much? I'm starting to think he should spend more.
No, actually, in LeBron, I would say in LeBron's case, he views it as a lot because he is, by his own admission, notoriously cheap. Like
it's true.
I'm serious. I mean, LeBron will be the first.
True. No, that's true.
Forget guys like Dwayne Wade or Chris Paul, who are Melo, who will say it. LeBron will say it. I've told you this before. I have a Pandora account, but mine is the free one that you get the commercials, which I don't really care. I can sit through a minute of commercials. It's fine. The reason, I'm not joking, that I have justified to myself that both for Spotify and Pandora, I can deal with the commercials is I heard LeBron one time say that he has a free Pandora setting and that he does not pay for the upgrade without the commercials. By the way, LeBron, who's somebody who makes money off commercial, like, he's in that world. I'm like, well, shit, if it's good enough for LeBron, it's good enough for me.
How much do you think your body is worth spending on? Like LeBron James, his body is worth spend. Like that is an investment worth the $1 million, and
Do
you
you
get
could
back
argue
more
in
credit.
LeBron's case, he's being cheap with the $1
That's
million.
my saying. Like that's what I'm saying. Like I don't, given what he makes, given what his income is, and given what his value of his body is, $1 million doesn't seem like that great an investment. How much do you think your body's worth? Like, what's the maximum amount that you think is worth putting into that?
Well, I mean,
This vessel of yours over here.
I was unwilling to maintain my Planet Fitness membership during the pandemic.
Well, no, Planet Fitness closed, and that is $10 a month. It should be noted. Planet Fitness.
I did buy during the pandemic new running shoes, and I was running for a couple months. Then I started having knee issues. We got our daughter a trampoline for her birthday, like a pretty nice trampoline during the pandemic because we wanted something fun for her to do. I was using that for a while. That trampoline was not cheap, so I don't know. I guess I'm willing to spend in the mid 3 digits on my body, something like that. Middle 3.
That's the total amount of investment that your body is worth. Because if I had an extra $1 million, there's a point at which the money just isn't doing anything anymore. It's like,
no, this is the difference between me and LeBron. If I had that type of disposable cash that I could spend $1 million on body maintenance, it would guarantee that I would not be motivated enough to maintain my body. Like, that's the difference between me and LeBron. If I can spend $1 million to make sure my body is okay, that would make me go, fuck it. What do I need to do it for? I got this type of money. It would make me incredibly lazy. Again, that's the difference between me and somebody like LeBron.
That's the difference.
Yes, it's the only difference.
It's the only one that I can find. So real quick before we get to Meyers Leonard here in a second, but the Nets tonight continue to sort of throttle the league. I understand the Celtics sort of suck, and they are not doing well. Jaylen Brown, I think, was 5 of 23 tonight, but the Nets win, and they did the thing again where they kind of pull away from what is supposed to be at least a decent opponent. Late in games, their fourth quarter defense, which a lot of people were worried about, has been really, has been effective. They're pulling away from teams late. Here's my theory, because I know you were rightly, curious about their defense, and a lot of people have been. I'm starting to think that their defense doesn't even have to be that great down the stretch, because their offense is so freaking scary that teams, and I got this impression watching Boston tonight, teams are going to feel so much pressure to score on basically every possession that you're going to see tightness, you're going to see bad shot selection, you're going to see a lot of pressing coming from teams, at least in the regular season. So insofar as that concern goes, I think their offense is actually so good it's going to improve their defense.
Yeah, it's an interesting way of looking at it. And I admittedly, I was somebody who was very, very skeptical of this team because of the defensive issues that, to be fair, I think they still need to work through and have not been solved. And as much as I think Blake Griffin can be helpful to this team, I don't think he's not going to help them on the defensive end. I just think he can do more for them offensively than he's getting credit for because he's no longer Lob City. Mm-hmm. But one thing that I will say that I did not consider enough when I really was skeptical because of the defensive issues is the idea that teams around the league, generally speaking, are struggling with defense. I think because largely there's no practice time, and you really don't get the ability to work on things that often happen in practice. So a team like the Nets that, on top of being so talented, plays so spread out with 3 incredible ISO guys and, dudes like Joe Harris who can shoot, they become exceptionally difficult to defend, but also exceptionally difficult to try to implement stuff against. It's going to be really interesting to see what happens in the playoffs where things slow down a little bit in terms of the pacing of games. And especially, a team like Philly or a team like Milwaukee that has wing defenders, if they can figure out ways to try to slow them with a little more time. But for the regular season, I did not take into account that particular wrinkle. And thus far, I'm looking wrong for having not taken it into account.
Our friend Jeff points out that it's annoying. I think it's true. Like he says, it's annoying how I haven't been offended by Harden's play with Brooklyn. It is like watching a completely different guy. I mean, there's still some of the same tendencies, but he's not nearly as irritating. And I say this as a Harden fan, nearly as irritating as he was with Houston. It's a lot more fun.
Well, I mean, look, we talked about this before. Part of what I don't like about Harden on the court in terms of enjoying watching him is there's just been like a joylessness in the way he plays. He has a very aloof personality in general, and to be fair, he's there to perform basketball at a high level. He's not there to, entertain me or make me enjoy him more aesthetically. But that being said, I've said before, he often feels to me like somebody who invoices his team after every game. Like he feels put upon or looks put upon every time he actually starts doing his dribbling and driving and all that shit. But it hasn't been as much there with Brooklyn. I mean, maybe he really just is happier there. And this is what it looks like for James Harden when he's more happy.
Look, every time you bring this up, I always like to point out the Getty Images has a page that's just 406 images of James Harden smiling.
I get
how much
it.
fun he's having.
I get it. But you know what? He's been in the league a long time. When you think about how often he's been on film, on camera, that's actually not that many smiles.
Have you figured out how he manages to simultaneously look fat and skinny in the same game?
Who was it? There was someone
like this one doesn't help. The one with him in the old Nets jersey.
I want to say it was Malik. I think Malika Andrews was on Pablo Torre's podcast for ESPN, and they were talking about the Nets. And one of them, I think, had a conspiracy theory that he was wearing a fat suit in Houston as a way to try to get him out. And also, too, just, the Nets uniforms, I think, tend to be more slimming than some of the stuff with the Rockets. But yeah, he's playing. This is a good way of putting it from Jeff. He's playing a less lonely version of basketball. Additionally, I've managed to fat.
I just say the other thing I like about watching the Nets, and I've decided I really like watching the Nets. I like the uniforms they were wearing tonight. They have some good setups. I hate, even aside from those throwback to the 90s awful Nets uniforms. But I like that. I've kind of always wondered, like, what would Kyrie look like if, he was playing in games that matter, but didn't have to do anything but all the cool shit Kyrie Irving can do. Like, he has zero responsibilities to do anything on this. He's not running the offense. Harden is doing that. When Durant gets back, like, Durant's still going to be kind of seen, I think, in some ways as like the killer scorer or whatever it is. And Kyrie can just go out there and hit 3-pointers and run up and down the floor and use his handle. And he's incredibly fun.
Yeah.
Weird, but he's incredibly fun.
Oh, no. Kyrie is maybe at his size the best finisher I've ever seen in my life. Like, he is unbelievably good around the basket, unbelievably creative, and plays angles and has this incredible handle. He's a lot of fun to watch. I mean, pain in the ass at times it has seemed like for teammates, but you know what? He may also now just be in a place where he's happier. And, the weirdness only matters if he's putting people off. You know what I mean? Like, that's all that matters. If he's not, then it doesn't matter.
We'll move on after this. But the one thing that I think is still, and it's weird because you're talking about Kevin Durant, the one thing that's still missing is we haven't seen all three of these guys play together a lot.
I know.
I'm not sure how much that'll matter because that is some talent. But
getting a message, by the way, that we are going to be joined by Michael Lee momentarily.
Oh, good. So what do you want to do? You want to talk Meyers Leonard and then
let's talk
the Eddie Jones thing?
Yeah,
okay.
I want to wait for Michael to be here for Eddie Jones, but let's talk about Meyers Leonard, and then when Michael gets here, we'll have him weigh in as well, because there's a specific part of this with Meyers Leonard that I want to ask him about.
Sure. Where would you like?
Oh,
Myers. I thought you were going to keep going. I'm
sorry.
So Myers, for people though, Meyers Leonard was fined $50,000 today, right? That came out
Yes.
today, and will be officially suspended from team activities for a week, despite the fact the Heat told him just to stay away indefinitely. The league's suspension for him is a week. So that's the official punishment. People did not like it today on Twitter. They thought generally speaking, most people thought that was just way too light for Meyers Leonard, without understanding that's, I think, the most of the league could fine him for that.
Yeah, as far as monetarily, for however they define the transgression that Meyers Leonard did during that game, that is the max that you can go. I recognize that given the transgression and the ugliness of the word and what Meyers Leonard makes, it seems like comically low, but it is apparently the most the league can go in terms of just what is there in the CBA.
Yeah, so you can't always do the, wait, what happened in 2007, this guy got fined $100,000. Like, that's not how the world works. I'm not outraged by the punishment. I think the maximum fine is okay. I think it's what he deserves. Do I care if he's suspended for a week, for 2 weeks? Not really. I really don't. I don't like to play the sort of relative game of last time this happened, this offense is worse than that one. It's really bad what he did. He's going to have trouble getting himself back in the league, I think, as somebody whose play was putting him on the fringe in a lot of ways anyway, depending on how much he expected to get paid. I am interested in sort of the future of this and how the Meyers Leonard story becomes part of the fabric of how we talk about these things. Because, like you pointed out yesterday, Andy, if he didn't know what the word meant, what did he think it meant? And the explanation that he had today and all the
well, he's going to eventually.
How much leeway do we give people going forward on this stuff, for ignorance?
Well, he is eventually. I mean, I think he's going to spend the overwhelming majority, if not the entirety of this season, completely hidden by the Heat. He will do some press conference at some point where he does the mea culpa and takes questions. And then from there, I think the Heat are going to keep him completely out of sight. He's going to, do the diversity, sensitivity training, whatever you want to call it, from the league. I feel like if they really want to punish Meyers Leonard, they should make him spend a week going to Orthodox services, because goddamn, those are long. Those
are really long. He'll learn a lot of words.
Super long.
First
meals of gefilte fish.
If he does it,
I mean, I think you and I, as members of the tribe, so to speak, I think they should put us on the punishment committee, because if you really want to make Meyers Leonard feel this from the perspective of Judaism, you need to bring in folks like us.
Yeah.
I think we can really make him feel this.
Let's assume for just a minute that Meyers Leonard's telling the truth and he just didn't know what that word meant.
Boy, that's doing a lot of work. Pretending is doing, like I said, yes. Or when we discussed this a couple days ago, I could believe that Meyers Leonard knew that this was derogatory or in some way insulting towards Jewish people, but did not realize the degree to which it was. I could maybe believe that. I do not believe for a second that he did not realize that it was connected to Jewish people. Unless he thought that he was playing, was the gaming opponent at the other end of that insult a Jewish woman? Because I have questions. But go back. Let's pretend here for a second, and let's take Meyers Leonard at his word. Sure.
Somebody's got to sit down with him and go through probably a lot of other words. Because I am concerned that Meyers Leonard is just a ticking time bomb in other ways. Because if he's a 29-year-old human being who is, spent 2 years at college, and he's been he's been an NBA player, he's been around, he's got access to information, and he doesn't know what that word is, or at the very least doesn't have a ballpark understanding of why it needs to not be in your very casual gaming vocabulary. I suspect there are probably some other things that he needs to learn too, and he's going to get himself into other hot water by not knowing what words you're not allowed, shouldn't be saying. I mean, it's just, I that's the part that makes it tricky for me.
Yeah, I mean, look, it's interesting when you go back and read some of the pieces about him in the bubble with not kneeling for the anthem. And, he stood out very much for
here. You see him, right?
Oh, hey. I did not. I'm sorry. I was
He's
actually
like a
in the process
ninja.
I was in the process of tweeting this thing. Michael, man, how are you?
I'm good. I'm just an old man.
Aren't we all?
Blame you. You are, by the way, I think the first guest we've ever had who is like literally in the corner. Like you are in like perfectly lined up along the crease of the corner.
Well, yeah, that's the way I always do these Zoom calls, so people feel like I'm trapped or I'm being held captive.
That is actually how many of our guests join the show. They have safe words. Oftentimes people do the thing where like we get emails from people where they say clearly they were under duress because they were saying things that we know they would never say in real life. So hopefully it doesn't come to that. But it's good to see you. How's everything? The family good? I know you're probably tired anyway as a pretty new dad.
Yeah, this is like odd night. Like it was my 9-month-old is teething, so he's having rough nights now. So apologize for being a little late.
Oh, don't sweat it, man.
I had a feeling it might be something like that.
I thought it was either that or, to be honest, that you fell asleep. Clinton Yates one time was supposed to be on with us, and he fell asleep. The difference, though, is that it was like 9 Pacific time when he fell asleep, as opposed to, in your case, it would have been around midnight.
Okay. Well, either way, I apologize.
It's okay.
Michael,
I once fell asleep and was late for our show, and I'm the host, so I sympathize. We have some fun stuff we want to get into. There was a great exchange on Twitter about Eddie Jones this morning and I apologize that it ended up filling your timeline all day, but it led to some fun stuff that we want to talk about. But we were talking about Meyers Leonard. And as we kind of get into this conversation, there was, Andy, I think we was just getting to the part where your expertise would be particularly valuable.
Yeah, one of the things I've been curious about with Meyers Leonard, and this is, at a time when I've had no access to players at all, really, because of the pandemic and this setup, but you have deeper relationships with a lot of players than Brian and I do. This situation with Leonard, like the politics of it all, is going to be dictated, I think, at least in part by player reaction to it, because that's how you're going to figure out the tenability of having him in your locker room moving forward, and how big a thing this is for his future in the league. How do you, if you had to guess, think players actually feel about this in terms of how upset they actually are? Because I've heard people compare it before with like the Eagles situation with Riley Cooper, and when he was at that Kenny Chesney, is that his name, country star, concert, and called black guy the N-word.
What happened? Yeah,
and
Italy.
Yeah, and he
Michael
had
Vick had to be the one to step up.
Exactly. And there's more of like a direct apples to apples comparison in that, in terms of when you take into account like the composition of the league and its players. The NBA doesn't have that type of Jewish representation.
No.
So I was curious, like, really how upset you think players really may be about this.
I think that owners are probably more upset than players. There have been some incidents in the past where I've heard, some anti-Semitic remarks. Steven Jackson from last summer, that stands out to me very prominently. And I was highly disappointed in what Steven had said at the time. And I was vocal about it on Twitter, but I didn't hear any condemnation from around the league from players. A lot of players still supported Steven Jackson. And a lot of them are like, well, he's done a lot of good in the community. He's out here marching. He's out here on the fight. He was good friends with George Floyd. He's spreading the message to protect our interests. And so a lot of guys just felt like, we're not going to jump on Steven and condemn him when he's already getting enough dealing with this stuff. I think that you can kind of see from some of the comments from Heat players that they're going to welcome him in whenever he comes back. I don't get the sense that there's going to be some league-wide, he didn't see it on Twitter. You didn't see, players saying Meyers Leonard should not say this, and no one was coming out and saying anything. So I think that he won't have a problem going into a locker room. I think if he had said something else that offended the majority of NBA players, I think the reaction would be a lot different. But when it comes to something like this, he sent out an apology. I don't think that they'll hold a grudge against him for much longer than it's a news cycle.
Right. One of the things that I think is interesting about this too is that Leonard, because he didn't kneel with the players in the bubble, is not a popular figure on sort of NBA Twitter. Like he is not, the sort of the millennial generation. The NBA is a left-leaning, hyper enthusiastic fan base. I don't that's not like a secret. So he's already not popular for that. People make a lot of assumptions about him that, to be honest, I think may be unfair. I don't, but maybe they are, maybe they aren't. I don't know the guy, but they're putting A with B here. He didn't do this. He said this, and therefore he is that. Do you get the sense that that the players said all the right things about it? All the nice things about him in the bubble, that it's okay. We know we support him on. Did they believe that? Like, is there any? Does one have anything to do with the other in terms of how players will actually perceive him?
I think that NBA Twitter and NBA locker rooms are two different places, and that a lot of the things that will lead to an outrage or lead to people being upset on NBA Twitter will not move NBA players. And no matter how they feel about him, about him standing during the national anthem or not, I don't think they'll really express it. I think that they'll just go out there and they'll just play ball. One of the things that I don't think a lot of people understand is that there are, say, not a lot, but there are some players in the NBA who weren't necessarily approving of the social justice messages that were going on in the bubble last year. A lot of them felt like they probably couldn't or shouldn't say anything because of how to be perceived. But also their teammates, in a lot of senses, they're aware of it too. They know who these guys are. They still have a job to do, and they still have to go out there and perform. It may not mean they have a lot of friends in the locker room, but it will mean that they still have to go out there and do their jobs. And so it's kind of a strange thing. I don't want to necessarily put your political beliefs in terms of what you say that could be offensive when it comes to racial or culturally offensive comments. But in some ways it is. Some people can't separate the two in some respects. So I feel like with this, even if like the Miami Heat players, I don't think it really caused any problems. At the time, a lot of his teammates were the main ones coming out saying we love Meyers, and I've even seen, guys, and just now, like the Heat players, like you heard Udonis Haslem say that, he apologized. We don't accept it. It's not cool, but they'll let Meyers back in. He made a joke about that. My Jewish friends call me Haslemberg.
Yeah, which was great.
Yeah, it was great.
And by the way, a couple people were offended that at Haslam, it's like,
yeah, but that's what I'm saying. Like you're with that, you could offend people or make people have an eye roll or cringe. But I think that even that, I sent this like a couple of my friends in media who are Jewish, and they laughed. So I thought they'd be offended, but they laughed.
I thought it was hilarious.
That was a great line.
But by the way, I would be, if I was Meyers Leonard, very relieved to hear that Udonis Haslem has my back, because you want to talk about one guy that I don't want mad at me, it's him. Yeah, I don't want that dude. I don't want to be on that dude's bad side.
Yeah, I think the fact that he made that comment so flippantly, and said it with his chest, during that little exchange on the video game, and I think that now players probably look at him a little bit like, what else are you saying? when I'm not around that you feel comfortable about saying. Because that's the one thing about that whole incident is that if you're at home, you're playing a video game, that's probably when you're most relaxed. It's probably when your guard is down more than anything else. And so the fact that he said it and then kind of moved on from it, like he said it, and then you could feel like his brain was sort of working like, wait, that's just said this on a live stream. Is anybody going to catch that? Let me just keep moving.
The answer to that one was yes. People are going to catch it.
Yeah. The apology was pretty lame too. I think that we're at this stage now where we kind of can expect what kind of apology you'll get, something like this. And I wouldn't say he hit all the notes that you're used to, because I don't think I've heard anybody say, I'm not sure what that word means. I just like to say it.
I just said it, right? I mean, what grown man, and he's 29 years old, what grown up just throws around words where they don't know the meaning?
Yeah, he totally knew the word. He understood the context.
Somebody because he's eventually going to do a press conference. It'll probably be the only time he's visible for the rest of this season, but they're going to have to put him in front of reporters at some point. I hope somebody asks him, what did you think it meant?
Yeah. And even then, I don't think that there'll be anything that he'll say that will appease anybody, because everybody's got their mind made up right now. But I don't believe that. I think that if he had said another word, and I think we know what word I'm talking about, he'd have much more problems. But I also think that, players, even his teammates, would probably welcome him back, but then just be like, watch yourself now.
I used to think that
the criticism, gold digger in the locker room. Just look at him, just see, are you mouthing words here?
You just.
I tell you, when we played
turn
that
away,
wedding,
Meyers. Turn away.
We used the clean version at my wedding. We didn't even give people the option. But like, I think I've seen people criticize it based on why aren't people reacting the same way? It is 100% normal to perceive things differently when they are closer to your identity, your community, whatever it might be. I'm not, but in terms of Meyers Leonard's apology, I would have had more respect for it if been like, guys, this is really on me.
Yeah.
Just not a fan of the Jews. I'm sorry. I don't like them. It's a me problem. It's not a them problem. I get it. But I would have respected that more than I didn't know what that word meant. So
yeah, I would love a little ownership of it. Just responsibility for what you say.
Somewhere in between what Meyers said and what Brian just said. Somewhere in between.
Hey, there's a happy sorry, not a fan.
Here, yeah.
All right. So, Michael, one of the things that turned out to be just a happy, fun coincidence was today on Twitter, Basketball Reference, their account pointed out that today in 1999, it is the 22nd anniversary of the trade that sent Eddie Jones and Eldon Campbell to Charlotte for Glenn Rice, J.R. Reed, and a soon-to-be waived immediately B.J. Armstrong. You tweeted out, the day I stopped being a Lakers fan. And then I saw this exchange was pretty great. Somebody said to you, damn, unlucky, to which you responded, I have no regrets. So
not a one.
First of all, okay.
to be fair, you've landed on your feet. You've done okay.
I'm doing okay. You see, I'm wearing a Royal shirt right now because my hometown team won the World Series in 2015, so I'm good.
Okay, that's one of the things we wanted to ask you about. But A, how did you end up a Laker fan? Because we know that you're not from LA. Yeah. And then B, what is it about Eddie Jones that spoke to you? Because that guy was so popular. I don't think you can overstate.
You gave up the team for Eddie Jones.
Laker fans loved Eddie Jones.
It was a combination. But yeah. I mean, so I got a long convoluted path to become a huge Eddie Jones fan, and I'll tell that a little later. But my love for basketball began with Magic Johnson. Just seeing him lead a fast break, just dribbling up the court, just pointing directions, pointing everybody where they needed to go, dishing it to James Worthy on one side, Byron Scott on the other. That was just a thing of beauty for me, and I love basketball the minute I saw Magic Johnson play. And so I had to be a Lakers fan. And during the '80s, you had to pick a side. You're either gonna be a Lakers fan or a Celtics fan. And I was a Lakers fan, and as were a lot of black people in America at that point, because they were the black team and the Celtics were the white team. And my father had a friend, best friend. One of his best friends was a Celtics fan, and none of us understood how he could be a black man and be a Celtics fan. What? How was this possible? He loved Larry Bird, and so. But the Lakers were just my team, and I just every year I was all into the Lakers, and of course, when Magic retired or was forced to retire in '91, when he made that announcement that he had HIV, I cried. Like, I thought he was insane. I'm gonna die in like a month, and I thought that was the end of him. Matter of fact, one of my friends, my neighbors, I remember like it was yesterday. We were at his house listening to Death Certificate by Ice Cube. It had just come out.
Yeah.
And we were in there, and like when he was done playing the tape, we were all hyped. We're like, yo, that was dope. We love it. And he's like, yo, man, you hear about Magic Johnson? And I was like, what? Man, he got AIDS. And I said, man, shut up, man. He's like, no, I'm serious. I'm like, nah, man, just stop playing. And we almost got into a fight because I thought he was basically telling me Magic was dead, was going to die. And so obviously Magic's still alive and going strong. But at that time, I thought it was a death sentence.
Yeah.
And so I was scared. But I was like, when he had to retire, I was like, I'm still going to stick with the Lakers. This is still going to be my team. And also got to remember, I'm from Kansas City. So the Kings left in 1985. So I don't like Sacramento at all because they stole my team, so that's it. So I had to find an NBA team, and it was going to be the team that won. So it was going to be the Lakers.
How old were you when they left? Because Andy and I went through this with the football Cardinals when they went to Arizona.
Yeah, I was 8 when they left.
Okay.
Yeah. So, and I still remember.
15.
Okay. And I still remember watching the news, and I was furious. I was like, why are they leaving? Like, what are they going? And they said, well, and I remember the broadcast. I don't remember his name, but I just remember like I wanted to punch him through the TV. He was like, well, the good news is we still have the Kansas City Comets. Now, the Kansas City
Comets, but that was a big like the MISL.
Yeah, at the time
that was a big fucking deal.
You guys had a big rivalry with us, the Steamers.
Yes.
I didn't care about soccer, so I was furious. I was like, what? The Comets aren't the same as the Kings, And so when the Lakers, like when Magic retired and the Lakers sort of went, down, I stuck with them, and then they drafted Anthony Peeler right after that, and Anthony Peeler's from Kansas City, and so that made it easy for me to stay with the Lakers because I actually saw Anthony Peeler play in high school. He's the same class as my brother, and we'd always go to the games, and Anthony Peeler would dominate, and he would just be just this amazing player. He went to Missouri, had a great career there, and so I stayed with the Lakers. But then once they drafted Eddie Jones, I was like, yo, this kid is smooth. Like, I just love the way he moved. I loved it. I mean, obviously he was very athletic and he could dunk on people, but it was just a smoothness to how he carried himself on the floor. He played hard on both ends. He was a great defensive player. And I just loved just something about him that he was just like this really underrated player who, if you didn't really know the game, you wouldn't really know who he was or care about him. But he was an all-star. So he had the respect of his peers and coaches because he brought it all the time. But he also was this great defensive player.
Yeah,
so he would do all the things that you needed to win a game. And I also understood his shortcomings, And so, but that made me kind of appreciate him more, And then I remember in 1996. This is a long story, so I hope I'm not boring anybody.
No.
In 1996, I interned at the Fort Lauderdale Sun-Sentinel. And so I had rented an apartment in Pompano Beach, which was very far from South Florida, from the office, but it was cheap and I could afford it for my internship. And it was right around the corner from Ely High School, which is where Eddie Jones went to high school. So I was like, yo, I'm in Eddie Jones's neighborhood. Like, this is it. Like, and so I felt a deeper connection when I lived in Pompano because I was like, I'm in Eddie's hood. So, that's my dude for real. And so I just was a huge Eddie fan. And I remember in college, for like our first art project. They said just do a painting, and I painted Eddie Jones, and I had him in a number 6 jersey, and
I didn't know that you
was,
painted. I didn't know you had that background.
yeah, I actually minored in fine art. Yeah,
Did not
that was
know
my
that.
minor. Yeah,
That's cool.
yeah. Art is my first love. Art's my passion. Art's what I did. It's funny. Like if you come across people who knew me in high school, they only knew me as a guy who sculpted and did stuff with art. So that was my thing.
Now, did you stop? I mean, you made the painting of Eddie Jones. Did you stop at the sculpture of Eddie Jones? Because at some point it starts to get a little weird.
I did not do a sculpture of Eddie Jones. I did do a painting of him, and it was funny when I did the painting, and I unveiled it in class, and all the other students were like, "Oh wow, Kobe Bryant!" I was pissed. Okay, because I did not like Kobe Bryant.
I was going to say, this is going to add some fuel to that fire because they moved Eddie Jones in part to create more opportunity for Kobe.
Absolutely.
So then Kobe starts feeling more personal with Eddie Jones, and it's devaluing your art. It's devaluing the worth of that painting.
Yeah, it is. I still have the painting, by the way.
Do you?
Yeah.
Like
Absolutely.
handy?
Not on me.
Okay.
I did post a picture on social media.
Okay.
Yeah, because people were like, "Oh, stop making it up that you're Eddie Jones." I was like, "No, I'm serious. Like, I was a big time Eddie Jones fan."
Well, but it's funny you say, like, particularly at the time. I feel like if you were somebody who appreciated kind of the nuance of Eddie Jones, you probably didn't like 1998 Kobe Bryant, 1999 Kobe Bryant.
Did not like 1997 Airball Kobe Bryant. Was not feeling that.
Oh, I think I found it.
I did find it. I found this.
What'd you find? The art?
The art.
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh,
it's really good.
This is good. Brian, do you have it?
I'm trying to make it big enough that people can see it. Because right now all I have is the screen share, and I can't figure out how to make it big enough.
Okay, I can do it. Keep talking. I'll do it.
I know how to do it. All right, we'll do it. Yeah, but so what didn't you like?
You had
about
a Google
Kobe?
search. I mean, how did you find that?
Yeah,
like,
Michael Lee, Eddie Jones painting.
Oh, okay. All right.
I got it. So what didn't you like?
Yourself
what
a
was
damn
it that you
reporter,
didn't like
Michael?
about Kobe?
Come on.
You say what?
I'm sorry. Call yourself a damn reporter. Come on. You should be able to do this.
Hey, you guys get props. This is next level.
Yeah, we're working in real time here. So, what didn't you like about Kobe?
My introduction to him, that press conference he did at high school with the glasses on his head, and he was like, I'm taking my talents to the NBA. I'm like, who is this kid? Who does this kid think he's gonna walk into the NBA?
Get off my lawn.
There we go.
There we go.
Look at that. That's great.
It's the absolute Eddie Jones painting by yours truly from college. And so, but yeah,
really cool.
So
what did you get? Did they give you a good grade?
Yeah, I got an A. It's weird because I was deep into journalism at that point, and so I wasn't really doing art. But I had to have a minor, so I chose fine art because I figured I could just take art classes. And so my senior year, I just did all art. I took all art classes my last semester, just to get my minor and just kind of have fun my last semester, just do whatever I wanted to do. So I took like graphic design courses and everything. So it was fun. And so I took sculpture, took painting, and like the sculpture teacher, she was like, I wish I had you as a freshman because we would have really done some great things. And so, sculpting is honestly, like, I haven't done it in probably 10 years. I haven't done a sculpture in like 10 years. But if you put clay in front of me and gave me like a full day to do something, I could come back with something pretty cool. Like painting is not my thing. Like paint, like that was what you saw, that painting you saw right there. That was honestly the first painting that I had done on oil.
Wow.
Yeah, so I had never painted before with oil paint. So that was my first time doing it. So that's probably why it looks a little like kiddie still, but that was the first time I'd ever like painted with oil. So
you're setting yourself up, by the way, for the next time we have you on, which is we'll send you some clay at 9 a.m. or something and be like, all right, you've got the day.
yeah. No, I'm serious. Like when I talk about like I was good in art, like
I believe you. I'm saying I think that would be cool.
In the NAACP AXO national competitions, I competed. I was on TV as a kid. My first time I was on TV, they did a story on me and my artwork, and
wow,
because I had created the dream team out of clay. So I had sculpted, the starting five: Magic, Larry, Michael, Patrick, all those guys. I had done that team. And so, yeah. So, and matter of fact, the first time I was in a newspaper was a political cartoon. I drew a political cartoon about Sister Soldier. And
the Bill Clinton thing.
Yep. So I did that. So, and I also, yeah. So it's a long story about my journalism career too. But my first publication were actually cartoons. So yeah, that like this is a big deal for me to like with art. But as for like you asked about Kobe, I didn't like Kobe. I didn't. I thought he was just kind of arrogant, and I didn't think he was ready for this stage coming out of high school. Because we got to remember in '96, a lot of these kids don't know because they just saw Kobe, be great,
right?
And so they didn't really know that a guy coming out of high school just a guard at that. Just wasn't going to be perceived as somebody that you should invest in. And I didn't know anything about him. I was like, of course you're going to dominate. Everybody dominates high school. Like, what makes you think you can come to the NBA? And so I resented the fact that he was being groomed to take Eddie's spot. So I resented all of that. When they drafted him, I was like, oh gosh, I got to root for this guy. Like, I really just did not like Kobe. And it's funny because, I covered the NBA, and I actually had a pretty decent relationship with Kobe while he was in the league, and I never told him like how I felt about him when he first entered the league, because I'm sure he would have just held it against me forever. But I also know that my first interaction with Kobe changed my entire perception of him, and I actually started to like him. And so I can tell you my first Kobe story was when I was working at the AJC. The Atlanta Journal-Constitution, I covered the Hawks, and I used to split the beat with a guy named Jeff Denberg. Rest in peace, the late great Jeff Denberg. He had wound up. His son used to live in Portland, so he would do West Coast trips, and so we would split it. So he would do Portland and just hang out with his son, and so the Hawks were getting ready to come to LA. So I basically convinced my editors to send me to LA a couple days early, and I was like, I can get Kobe, just talking smack. Like I never talked to Kobe before. So remember when Kobe had like that streak of games where he scored 40 in a row?
You're gonna have to be more specific.
In 2003,
right?
He had like a string of like he had like it was like when Shaq was out, he had like a toe issue.
Oh yeah.
And Kobe just went ballistic, went bonkers.
Yes.
I went to LA that night, and I was like, I'm gonna do a story on Kobe. And when I showed up, I was just walking in the tunnel, and wouldn't you believe it? Guess who was walking down the tunnel as I was walking down the tunnel?
Eddie Jones.
Magic Johnson.
Oh.
Magic Johnson. And I saw him, I say, hey, and everybody's walked up to Magic. Everybody's shaking his hand. Magic working the room. Hey, everybody. Hey, what's up? Hey, what's going on? Hey, what's up? And I was like, oh, snap, Magic Johnson. And so I walked up to Magic, and I say, hello, Magic. I'm Michael Lee with the Atlanta Journal-Constitution. I'd like to talk to you about Kobe Bryant for a second. And he just looked at me, and he just kept talking to everybody else. Like, hey, what's up? Hey, what's up? So eventually the crowd dispersed, and I just kind of standing there. And Magic looks at me. He's like, didn't you need me? And I was like, oh yeah, but I thought I didn't know if we were actually gonna be able to talk. He's like, yeah, we can talk. And then he opened up some door, like it was like a trap door. Like and he was like, he was like, come on, let's go in here real quick. And I was like, and I'm telling you, all these years that I've been in Staples, I've never seen this door again.
I actually don't. I was really trying to think about this because I've been in Staples a zillion times. I have no idea what you're talking about.
It's like that scene in that Harry Potter movie.
I couldn't find it if I was looking for it. It's like, but somehow he had the amulet, like he could just push the button and it was just open. Like,
yeah, I have no idea. I can't even picture what you're talking about.
I have no idea. Like if somebody asked me to find it again, I wouldn't know where it was. But Magic opened the door, and I was like, well, I didn't think I could go in there. And he's like, I'm Magic. And I was like, yeah, you are. So I walked in, and he was some back room, like, and we did it. And he gave me a one-on-one talking about Kobe and everything else. So I was like, oh my gosh, Magic's my hero. Like, Magic's my favorite player. And he's a nice guy too. He doesn't know me from anybody. I'm just a random, it's my first year really on the NBA beat, and this guy's gonna give me a one-on-one. Cool. So anyway, that night, I think the Lakers played the Clippers, and Kobe's streak came to an end. He stopped his 40-point streak, or 30. It was a 35-point streak or whatever, and so it ended that night. And so there was a huge mob of reporters around Kobe, and there's just all these cameras and everything. And I was like, yeah, well, and I couldn't get in. I couldn't hear a thing he was saying because I didn't know how to position myself. I didn't know where I should go. So I was just in the back, just like, I don't know what he's talking about. So anyway, I waited for the cameras and everybody to disperse. And Kobe's just standing there. And I say, Kobe, I'm Michael Lee, Land Journal Constitution. I flew all the way to LA to talk to you because you've been balling. And he was like, I said, do you have time to talk? He said, sure. And Kobe gave me a one-on-one. And we talked for like 6-7 minutes. He was telling me about, what was inspiring him to go on this scoring binge. And so he was just great. And the whole time I'm sitting there thinking, wow, if this dude knew how much I hated him, we wouldn't be having this interview right now. and so like in the process of me talking to him, I was like, you know what? Maybe he's not that bad. You know what? Maybe I see why everybody likes him. And it was funny because and after the interview, he shook my hand and he walked out, and I was kind of like trailing him a bit just to kind of catch the scene. And as he was walking out, some random guy just came from another tunnel and just handed him a box of Krispy Kreme donuts. I'll never forget it. Guy just walked out with a huge box of Krispy Kreme donuts, handed it to Kobe, and then Kobe, walked off. And I was like, wow, I like Krispy Kreme too. Me and Kobe, we got something in common.
One of my most enduring memories. Eddie, right? I've never seen Eddie Jones eat a donut. One of my most enduring memories of covering sports is walking into the Clippers locker room, and Darius Miles is in there eating a Big Mac like 35 minutes before the game. Like it just like stuff like that, like the amount of like what they ate, and like they would have. This was an era when people would have the runner, some kid in the locker room or whatever, go up and to the McDonald's in the concourse and bring them down food, and that's what they ate before the game.
Kobe, by his own admission, used to eat like crap. Like he used to eat early in his career horrible. Like he had to do a lot of adjustments. Along those lines.
The thing about that night too is that when I went back to my desk to get collect my stuff, I guess the timing of me getting my stuff matched up with him driving out of the garage, and this was when he was driving too, right? This was pre-helicopter too. So there's this mob of fans just standing outside the Staples Center, and I'm like, what's going on? And so I kind of got in the crowd before I went to go to my car in their other garage. And so I'm looking around trying to figure out why everybody's mobbed around. And next thing you know, Kobe pulls up, everybody cheers, and then Kobe drives off. I'm like, I bet you I'm the only person in here who knows that Kobe's got a box of Krispy Kreme donuts, right?
He's eating donuts. He drives a car. He's just like us.
Just like us.
So where did you go after you dropped the Lakers? Because I will say, we didn't have a team in St. Louis, so it was the same kind of deal. It was like Lakers or Celtics. That was it. And even as a white guy, I thought the Celtics were too weird looking. Like collectively, they were too strange looking for me to support. All of them were weird looking people in one form or another. They were either
remember the Arsenio Hall joke.
Oh no, what's that?
Arsenio Hall?
No. I mean, I remember Arsenio Hall. I don't remember the joke.
You can Google my art. I'm sure you could Google Arsenio Hall and the Celtics, and he talked about how like Kevin McHale looked like Frankenstein.
Oh, right. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. But like,
and he was like, how they got Dennis Johnson, a black man with freckles? It was like everything about him was. It was one of Arsenio's funnier jokes.
And I don't to this day, like people, like some friends of ours, like in high school, we did a thing where people were growing out mustaches for a month, and the best mustache we'd all donate, $500 as a group to the charity of the choice. And they were like, "Are you going to do it?" And I know, because if I try to grow out a mustache, it doesn't. I don't think I can do it very well. But I look like Larry Bird. Like, it's a terrible look. I can't do it.
Is that why?
But where did you go?
Beard?
It's just the whole thing. It's just terrible. It's a terrible look. So when you're abandoned by this, and the reason I ask is because the NBA today is very much, I think, a league where a lot of people follow players, more than they follow teams. So I'm just kind of curious. You're abandoned by the Kings. You give up on your team. Where did you go, and like how did that impact the way you looked at basketball and what your fandom and all that stuff?
Yeah, it's funny because I remember the day of the trade. I'm one of my friends who was a Laker fan, and he was like, "Yo, man, what you think about a trade?" I was like, "I'm done with the Lakers." He's like, "What?" I was like, "Yeah, man, I'm finished. I can't root for them ever again." He's like, "Oh, for Eddie Jones? Are you crazy?" He's like, he's trying to explain to me how Glenn Rice is a great fit, and I was like, "I don't want to hear it. I'm just done with them." And he's like, "Man, are you crazy?" He said, "Man, the Lakers." He said, "When they start winning championships, don't hop back on the bandwagon." I said, "Man, you don't have to worry about that." I said, "If they win a championship this year, next year, whatever, I don't care. I will not be cheering for them. I will not be rooting for them. Like, that's it." And to this day, like, we're still good friends, and he laughs about it because I'm done. And I think it was kind of perfect, that I was done with my fandom at the time, that I eventually was going to wind up covering the NBA. So I started working professionally at the Atlanta Journal-Constitution at that point. I had dreams of covering the NBA, and so it was kind of like a clean break. I didn't have any emotional ties to one team. I wasn't going to be mad if somebody shot air balls against Utah. I wasn't going to be upset with the team. I wasn't going to be mad at Shaq for getting swept out every year. So it took the emotion away from the game for me. So I was no longer a fan of a team. I was a fan of the game. So from that point, I can't say I left and became a Charlotte Hornets fan, because I did not become a Charlotte Hornets fan. I still rooted for Eddie. I still wanted him to succeed. And when he made the All-Star team in Charlotte, I was like, yeah, see, Glenn Rice ain't doing this.
Well, it's fun. I mean, this is something I've written about this before with The Athletic and talked about it a lot on Twitter. Like, Eddie Jones still has a strong cult popularity among Laker fans. I mean, actually, cult might not even be doing him justice. Like, he is more immensely popular than a lot of Lakers who actually accomplished more than him as a Laker. Like, there's something about Eddie Jones that fans just universally still
you usually have to win.
Beloved.
You got to win a ring or two.
I don't think
you get that kind of
I'll say this. There is no Laker, at least in my lifetime living in LA, which is now 30 plus years, that didn't win a ring that is anywhere as close to as popular as Eddie Jones. Like, not even close.
I think a lot of people realize too that Eddie is probably the victim of the worst timing of any player that you can imagine, because he gets traded by the Lakers. The next year they won the championship, went 3 in a row. And then he gets traded by the Heat years later. And that was the trade that set up the
you know what?
Heat.
You ended up in this Twitter thread, but Howard Beck, who he's now with Sports Illustrated, but for years he covered the Lakers with Daily News and maybe the LA Times. I don't remember, but he was around for the three-peat era and a little bit before that.
Yeah.
But we were talking about how if Phil Jackson was the coach of that team, they likely don't trade Eddie Jones, because the idea of an Eddie Jones, Kobe Bryant, point guardless backcourt wouldn't bother Phil. Because there was no traditional point guard in the triangle. He would have loved Eddie Jones.
He would have. It's funny because because I remember it was like I talked to Howard about it a lot, because me and Howard are pretty cool, and so I remember I asked him, like, just one time I asked him, what was it like to cover Eddie? And Eddie wasn't really the best with the media. So I was like, at that point, I knew I was never going to talk to Eddie. So I never approached Eddie. I never interviewed Eddie. I never talked to him, even though I covered the league. And while he was covered, I've never said a word to Eddie Jones in my entire life. Cause I didn't want to the same way, like, I talked to Magic and he turned out to be
you don't need to talk to him. You don't need to talk to him.
You
Yeah.
lived Eddie Jones.
Yeah, but same way I talked to Magic, he turned out to be great. What if Magic had been like, man, move on, scrub. I ain't got time for you. I'm Magic Johnson.
Well,
I would've
Magic
been
will
like,
talk to anybody. that was not going to happen with Magic.
No, I know, but imagine if that had happened. So if I go up
Yeah.
to Eddie, like, man, I ain't talking about this game, man. Screw, I ain't talking to you. And I would be like, man, dang.
I've got a painting.
I give the Lakers to you, dog.
Just wanted you to sign my painting.
I give the Lakers for you, dog. Like, this how you treat me?
It's in oils and everything.
But yeah,
my preferred medium is sculpture, but I did this for you.
I did this for you. But yeah, I'm sorry. What was the question? I missed the question again.
I'm not even sure there was one.
No, it's just commenting on just how popular.
No, I
think
I talked to Howard about it. Yeah, I talked to Howard.
Right.
Oh, that's right.
And so I never talked to him. But then I was like, so do you think they should have made the trade? Because you were covering the team, and he justified it at first. He justified it to me, and he said, what do you think? I said, I don't think they ever had to trade Eddie Jones. I said, I think they could have played together. I said, they were doing well. I said, they both made the All-Star team together. Like, it's not like they just were guys, and they didn't. I don't get the sense they didn't like each other. They seem to be cool with each other, even though Eddie was probably threatened by him and probably upset him. He handled it professionally. But then I was like, they's like, well, they played the same position. It wasn't going to work out. I was like, he made it work with Ron Harper. Like, Ron Harper was there, and I mean, obviously he wasn't as talented as Eddie, and Eddie probably wanted more shots and one thing like that. But I think Phil Jackson would have found a way to make that work in the triangle because he liked big guards, and Eddie had a decent enough handle. So did Kobe. Like, they could have made it work. It's not like they ran a triangle, so it's not like they needed Steve Nash running point. They just needed somebody who could bring the ball up the court and get it to Shaq. I think Ed would have done that.
That is true.
Especially in that era. But
what's crazy about it too is, like, you look back at what Glenn Rice did, when you go through that, and, like, what he was designed to do and the numbers. I think, Andy, you posted this morning, Glenn Rice took 3-3-pointers a game.
Yeah.
In the playoffs for the Lakers. Like, the idea that somebody with Glenn Rice's skills would take 3-3-pointers a game. If this were, if that happened now, he'd be taking 3 a quarter. Exactly. I mean,
I just looked it up. His per 36 in the playoffs that year was like 3 per game, shooting like 41%. like how do you not I know it wasn't like the analytics era or whatever, but it's like, we knew 41% was good then. Like, we were aware.
They were keeping track.
Like, what is that for?
I understood what Jerry West was thinking at the time. It made perfect sense. Yeah.
Yeah. It's just interesting to think about what it might have been if Phil was already there, because the notion of Eddie and Kobe together in a backcourt would not have seemed as untenable, I think, under Phil as it did Del Harris. And if you got to choose between Eddie Jones and Del Harris,
you got to go with Del, right? Because he had so much playoff success, right?
Yeah, ended up getting fired, like
all of his talent,
and ended up getting fired that season anyway.
Oh my gosh, man! Yeah, that was the end of. But fandom at that point was something that I could move out of,
right?
And also being a fan of Kansas City sports teams. Made it easy for me to just be a professional journalist and not really care about investing emotionally in teams. And like a lot, like it was funny on Twitter, I had a lot of people coming at me. Some people were like, "Oh, you missed out on these last 6 championships." I'm like, "No, I didn't miss anything. Like I didn't. I had a chance to experience the championships that Magic won, and those made me happy. So they carried me through my childhood. As an adult, I think at least for me, I've been able to find other things to find happiness in other sports team, and so I'm cool.
Andy
And
and
that,
I did a story one time for ESPN the magazine. We'll let you go here in a second, but where
we can keep
we
talking if you got to go. I mean, I'm up. I'm good.
okay, well, all right, then we'll keep talking. I was, you got like crying baby, and it's 12:30, and it's 1:15 or whatever time it is. But so
I'll let you
like
know if he starts crying again, and then
okay, we did a thing, and this lets you know too about how different it was because magazines were a thing, and budgets were a thing. They flew us all over the country. Andy and I pitched up like 3 or 4 or 5 teams each to be their next fan because we were free agents because our team left us. And I went to Pittsburgh. Oh my God, these people were nice. Great people inside the organization, so friendly, very accommodating. They kind of got the joke that we were telling and all that and whatever. And I started talking to Steelers fans, and it was like, oh yeah, no, if the Steelers lose on Sunday, man, it just ruins my week. Well, I was off. I can't. I'm like, I'm out. I can't. Like, I can't. To your point, like, I can't let sports ruin my life in that way because a football team loses. I got to go to work on Monday, like function and family and friends. I got a wife. I can't behave like that.
I mean, and think about this too. I stopped being a fan of the NFL after Colin Kaepernick was kicked out of the league, and this happened at the same time that the Chiefs drafted Patrick Mahomes as their quarterback. And, I've through my whole life, I never saw the Chiefs make it to the Super Bowl. And when they won the Super Bowl last year, I didn't watch the game.
Really?
Wow.
Until to be honest, I watched I watched the fourth quarter, but I watched like the last 8 minutes of the fourth quarter. I honestly did not watch it. And the only reason I watched it because it was on, and I was like, well, let me just see. It's the Chiefs. I did grow up a Chiefs fan. I did suffer with the Chiefs when they lost all of these games. I suffered through, all these just terrible debacles in the postseason. Just had my heart broken many, many times. And like, oh, let me see if they're actually going to pull this thing off. And I watched them pull it off. And I remember, as they were pulling away and had that, great comeback in the fourth quarter, the whole time I was like, well, I guess maybe my heart's melting and I'll just start loving my team again. And I really didn't feel anything. And it was weird. Like I didn't feel like the type of joy I thought I would feel if the Chiefs won a Super Bowl. I thought it would just bring me all this happiness. And I won't say I felt empty. I felt happy for my hometown because I knew I had friends and family back home. That meant the world that they won a Super Bowl. Like I have friends like this year when the Chiefs lost, he's like, man, I don't care. We had last year. Like I never thought we'd get last year. So I'm good with whatever happens from this point on. And I was like, oh, that's cool, but like for me, I just kind of disconnected. And
do you think that's a function of, because I know working in this industry changes how
it does.
view teams and view sports, but
yeah, definitely being a sports journalist is what has allowed me to sort of take the emotion out. Because now I have a job to do, and now my job, I don't just cover the NBA, I cover every sport, so I've got to deal with the NFL. So I just do my job. I'm not necessarily a fan of anything now. So and so that's just life, I think that being older too, and maybe there are people my age who are just crazy fans, but for me, I think being older has given me better perspective too, on like what you got to value and what's important, and like a crying baby teething is probably important. Yeah. You got to deal with that. But just, just in general, like I think that I respect fans to no end because I understand just how crazy you can be and just what it could do for you in terms of, your emotions. And in some ways it's like a drug, it could, make you feel euphoric and, win, you can walk out. Like I was at at game 5 when the Royals won against the Mets, in 2015. I was there and I was like, I almost cried. Like I felt the tears kind of welling up, when they won. But it's something that that's a memory I always have, that I was there and that I saw them win the World Series and I saw them come back and win that game. One of the best games I ever seen in person. And just I still remember Mets fans like around me. I was like a Royals fan surrounded by Mets fans, and just how cool they were in seeing the Royals win. And most of the Mets, like I thought I'll be in New York like wearing Royals gear, like I was about to get beat down. Like I was like I said, but I got to do it. This is once in a lifetime thing to see the Royals win the World Series, and I was there. And but the Mets fans were great. They're like, yo, your team earned it. Y'all the better team. And I was like, okay, New York fans, they got perspective. What? Maybe it's Mets fans. Maybe if it was
maybe not Yankees fans.
Yankees fans would have pelted me with.
You talk about perspective, Michael, and just like understanding what's important. You got a teething baby. That's rough. Check out this guy, our friend Nathan Mark, who actually watches this show from New Zealand. 1-bedroom motel room with a 3-year-old and a 10-month-old. Ooh, that sounds horrible. Ooh.
You know what? We got pretty much the same age range. I have my other son's 3 years old.
Oof. Stay out of 1-bedroom motel rooms. That's too many people. My 2-year-old decided this week that she is no longer interested in her afternoon nap. So she's just been letting herself out of her crib. Just, stays there, hops the fence, and just saunters into the other room. And my wife and I are like, well, crap. Like that's the end of it. Like we got her to sleep today, but once they you can't, when they give up that nap, we got kids downstairs in school. We got a kid upstairs who won't there is zero chance for me to hit any deadlines or do any constructive work at all. It just doesn't happen.
Yeah.
So
it's funny too. Like your kids, or even when I was a kid, I hated nap time. I would give anything for nap time. Yeah. I would give anything for like an afternoon nap. Like
I would love to be able to nap. I can't even nap anymore.
Yeah,
I would love to be able to do that.
Oh my gosh,
incredible!
And I don't need too much time. I could make 30 minutes work. I could do 30 minutes.
Disco naps, man.
Come back and just be charged up. But yeah.
Does falling asleep while you're doing what you're trying to do count as napping? Because I do that a lot, but that's different. Napping is intentional. Napping is like, I'm going to go do that in the same way that I'm going to go make a sandwich. That, like you don't accidentally eat a sandwich. I accidentally fall asleep all the time.
Yeah, I think that's just fatigue and old age.
Yeah,
that's what I blame it on. There are times that I will sit down or have grand plans, like, oh, I'm gonna go watch that show tonight. And I go sit down, and the next thing you know,
I can't see movies in theaters anymore because it's a dark room with a comfortable chair. I'm falling asleep.
I'm out.
Yeah, I will say, like I saw when they were at the beginning of the pandemic, when they're saying, one of the big symptoms of coronavirus is fatigue. Well, shit, I've had corona for 11 years, basically.
It's like that line in Wayne's World where Mike Myers says, I thought I had mono. It turns out I was just really bored. That's like how I am all the time. Brian knows I live my entire life convinced that I have like 15 different diseases. True. I just won't do anything about it. Like I'm not a hypochondriac, because hypochondriacs visit doctors all the time. You have to like force me into a doctor's office. I just try to make myself at peace with all the different things that I'm fighting. Every single day I'm fighting for my life against all these different conditions that I won't do a thing about.
Yeah. I mean, it's crazy that we're talking on the anniversary of the day everything shut down.
Yeah, I know. It's crazy that we've been doing this for a year.
Yeah, it's also crazy to like sort of have these remembrances while we're still in it.
Yeah,
like it'd be cool to like look back and say, oh, a year ago this happened. It's like, yes, we're still in that same year. Like, we have
nice to have a little distance.
Yeah, it'd be nice if we were out of it and moving on, and we could talk about it probably a little. But we're still in the midst of this crisis, which is just, I think that's the thing that, because I think when it hit, I was like, in a month we'll be back to normal. We'll get past it. I'm like, man, when are we gonna get out of this?
I don't know.
I look back, and not suspended because I've told the story. It's like at how important it seemed to me to be at that last game, because I was like, oh, you know what, they might not be able to let media in for much longer. I got to make sure I'm at this game.
Yeah.
To very quickly realize how little I needed to be at that game.
When I think about it, it's like, why did I even go to that game? Like, there were people in the stands.
Yes.
We were all just breathing that air. Like, what am I doing?
That like week and a half leading up to like the eventual shutdown, like week and a half, 2 weeks, I became so incredibly self-conscious of how many people were around us. And remember, like, they started penning off the players, like there'd be like a physical barricade between us and players when we would interview them during practices, or like they started moving everything out of locker rooms post-game and into larger interview rooms. And there would be this mandated distance between us and the players, or us and Frank Vogel. But then in the meantime, we're inside Staples Center with like probably 25 to 30,000 people in there. I'm like, the hell are we all doing? Like,
wow,
this makes no sense.
I remember that night that everything shut down. I was at a Philly game, it's Pistons, Sixers, and that's when they were going to bring players into press conference room, and there's no locker room access. They just put out all these protocols. But I had gone to a Wizards game like 2 or 3 days before, and we were in the locker room. Like, I had a one-on-one with Bam Adebayo. Like, we're talking face to face. Like, and this is just a couple of days where everything shut down. And the weird thing about like talking to Bam that day was he was wearing Bradley Beal's uniform. I guess because Bradley Beal had like given him his jersey.
Like an exchange?
I don't know if it was an exchange, but it was just kind of, I don't know if it was like he had his game jersey on or what, but like I think it was he got a clean, fresh Bradley Beal jersey, but we didn't know if he had put on the jersey Brad had just played in or what. I'm like, dude, you don't care about like this virus? You're just gonna wear a Bradley Beal jersey like with no shirt on, like, and so, but he so I was like, it's like this dude don't really care about protocols at all. But yeah, it was just weird that like I was just thinking to myself, like I'm standing there doing a one-on-one with Bam, and like 2 days later, like I don't even know when I'll be in the same room with Bam again. It's crazy. Yeah, I do know that night when I went to that Pistons Sixers game, I was like getting everybody just fist pounds, fist bumps. I didn't shake anybody's hand, and then the whole time I was there, I was like, why am I here again? like
it all seems so important at the time. Like, we're so used to, to bring kind of people behind. Like whenever people ask for advice, I'm like, what is the one thing that you would do other than, I guess, write all the time? Show up. Always show up. If you have access to something, show up. If it's a practice softball game, whatever it is, if you can get in and you're young and you're trying to show up. And so that's ingrained into all of us is show up, be there. You got to be there, or you might miss something. You might miss the thing, the opportunity. And that, in hindsight, did not apply. just saying.
I mean, we were fortunate. I mean, I was fortunate that nothing crazy happened. And I think it was funny too that night. Christian Wood scored a career high 30 points, right? And so they were going to bring one player out to talk to us, and so everybody assumed it would be Christian Wood because he had 30 points. He had a career night, and they didn't bring Christian out. They brought out Langston Galloway, who didn't have 30 points that night. But it was funny because Christian Wood tested positive coronavirus. He had symptoms that night in the locker room.
Huh.
So just imagine if they hadn't quarantined him off, or us from players, and we would go in the locker room and we would start interviewing guys for having big games, and we all would have talked to Christian Wood. Yeah. And he would have been talking to us with the virus.
Like if he was asymptomatic, or you're saying like that.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
He scored 30 that night, and then he felt sick after the game. And so they tested him and he tested positive. Then he's out there, but he was out there playing.
There was just so much we didn't know then. And, and the league was very much trying to see how much of their cake they could have and still eat it, even though, they clearly had the virus on their minds. And I think there was a stopping point that was going to be coming no matter what.
Yeah.
But those couple weeks leading up to it, I just remember all the time being inside Staples Center, just being like, seriously, what are we doing? Like I was starting to spend more time in my cubby, in the media room, just because I didn't want to be around anyone. I was eating my meals at that little desk. I just did not want to be around. I think
Andy's sort of antisocial anyway. This didn't help him.
And I don't like germs.
I think being antisocial is like, this is the best time for you.
Well, I remember
you don't have to be around people. Like, this is great.
LZ Granderson and I were doing a radio show together right before everything stopped and the 710 studio started doing everything remote. But he was having, we were talking with Michelle Beadle because they had plans that night to go see Hamilton, and they were trying to figure out whether or not they were going to go. And Beadle was joking about how, like, she is extremely antisocial by nature. So, like, obviously she didn't want to see like we didn't really even realize the extent of what this was going to become, but obviously she wasn't rooting for a pandemic, but she did kind of like the idea of, well, can't leave my place. What are you going to
do? My wife has zero problem with the amount of time she's had to spend at home. Her problem is that we're all here with her. That's the issue.
The other thing, I think I will probably have a very difficult time. I probably will never forget when I heard about the coronavirus. I haven't heard about it until January of that year, and I'll never forget it because I was sitting next to On Youngmasa, right? And he was like, "Yo, have you heard about this coronavirus?" And I was like, "No, what about it?" He's like, "Yo, man," and he put up his phone and like showed me all the stuff that was happening in China. I was like, "Yo, that's crazy! Wow, oh man, that's awful." And do you know what day that was? It was January 25th. It was a Lakers-Sixers game.
Right.
And LeBron James passed Kobe
the one
Bryant
in Philadelphia
on the all-time list.
Right.
Yeah.
And so we all know what happened the next day.
Well, Brian and I have talked about like how when we were at that tribute, at Staples Center, like, that was in February. It was February 24th, in honor of both Kobe and Gianna. Like, that was, in retrospect, a very unsafe thing to be holding. Like, and again,
the All-Star game was a few days before that.
Yes. Yes.
And I don't think there was, malice or people were trying to sneak something in. But I do wonder, like, the collective grieving experience in LA and the arc of the coronavirus in LA would have been significantly different if all that happened a month later, because there's 0% chance people wouldn't have congregated. And if they were forced not to congregate, it was a truly communal experience of a week-long thing. And then the memorial and all these other things. I can't imagine that occurring in an era where people were not really able to get together, or the Lakers having to not being able to stage some sort of public thing, not having a game where LeBron could address the crowd. All of these things, it was a month. It was not even that split A from B. And you think about all the people now, the president talked about it tonight in his speech, like, people who died of coronavirus, people who didn't die of coronavirus over the course of this year, who haven't been able to be memorialized, who haven't, where people haven't been. That to me is the saddest thing about all of this is as horrifying as the wrecking of people's businesses and all of these other things are, and the human suffering, just the sadness of having someone, a parent, a brother, a sister close to you die, and not be able to grieve with a funeral or like, and so multiply that by somebody who, where basically everybody in the city feels like they have some sense of ownership over this person's importance to them. I don't know what it would have been like, but it would not have been good.
No, it's just for me, it's just like, that was probably like, his death was like the first one that probably brought my own mortality to light. Because he's just a little bit younger than me, and I was just like, man, like, wow, like, there's somebody I knew. I don't say like we're friends or anything, but he knew me, and I knew him, and I was just like, wow, like, man, he's gone, and so that's sort of been tough. And then to have like this year, somebody who I was really good friends with, Sekou Smith, down the same day, the anniversary, like that. I'm probably still having difficulty with that at the last couple weeks.
You know what, Brian and I knew him to say hello, and had a couple conversations with him, but we didn't know him.
Yeah.
Like, can you just explain what was it about him that made so many people gravitate towards him? Because I mean, this industry, like any other industry, has a lot of gossip. It has a lot of backbiting. It has a lot of people saying shit about each other when they're not around. I have never heard a bad word about him in my life.
Yeah.
Ever.
You know, he just one of those people that you just felt good when you were in his presence. You know, he had a way of connecting to you, finding a connection with you and making you feel like you were just a part of him. You know, he's one of the funniest people I've ever been around. You know, he always had a joke. Like he just had the perfect comedic timing for everything, like any situation, and he always just added, levity, but he also could cuss you out in a heartbeat too. You know, he didn't take any mess. He didn't take any shorts. Like it was for me, it was interesting when he passed and I read all these tweets and everybody's like, he's such a sweetheart. He was such a good, and I was reading, I was like, I don't know if you really knew him because he would cuss anybody out like.
But you know what though? Whenever I saw him, Sekou always permeated kindness. He really did.
But he also did that too. And I always go back to this. I remember the thing about Sekou is like you always knew where he was coming from, and you always had to respect him in the end. And I remember like when he was covering the Hawks, he used to write about. I don't want to name the player because I don't want to necessarily put people's business out there. But like he had written a couple stories about a player, and had really pissed off the agent, like just pissed him off. Like he was just furious. And so they would kind of have these back and forths, and they would just be angry. And they wound up becoming such close friends that, like, I remember talking to the agent, after Sekou passed, and like I'm consoling him, like he's crying on the phone. He just had that kind of effect on people after a while. Like you were going to be you were either going to love him or like him, but you weren't going to hate him.
No.
And if you didn't like him, you weren't going to dislike him for very long because he's going to say something that's going to have you just double over laughing, I remember one time I was talking about a center, and I was like, man, I don't know how this dude is cutting it in the league. Like, how is he cutting? Like, he has no muscle definition. Like, I don't know how he's going to make it in the league. And Sekou looked at me. He's like, 7 feet of mashed potatoes. And I just died laughing because it was 7 feet of mashed potatoes. And that's what he looked like, 7 feet of mashed potatoes.
Now I'm trying to think who could be.
So then there was another.
Jeff Ruland.
Then there was another center.
Michael Doliak.
Who was black. And I said, yo, man, if he's 7 feet of mashed potatoes, what's he? He was like 7 feet of mashed potatoes and gravy. And I mean, I still remember that, but like that was just the timing, like just boom, boom, and you just but he always had stuff like that. But he also was somebody who, when he wanted to be serious and you wanted to have a deep conversation, you could do that as well. One of my favorite times I spent with him was right after I became a dad. For the first time, and he had 3 kids, and he loved his kids, and he would always talk about his kids. And I remember just we were just talking. We went out to eat in Vegas. It was just the 2 of us, and we were just talking about just me being a father, and just like I want to make sure I do it right. And he was telling me how if he could do it all over again, he would have try to do whatever he could to get off the road quicker.
Yeah.
Because the time that you spend with your kids is just that's always going to stay with them. That's what's going to resonate. They're not going to care that you're out there working. They're not going to care that you're on the road. They're not even going to care that you're talking to LeBron or Kobe or anybody. They just want to know that their dad's there. And so it stuck with me. And he's like, if you can, limit your trips, do shorter trips, try to do that. Because like, especially in the early years, that's the stuff that they're going to remember. That's the stuff that's going to allow that bond to be there and connect. And it always stuck with me, and it's with me to this day. And I got a lot of advice, the first couple of weeks or months of being a father. And that probably resonated more than anything, because I respected him, one, as a dad. I knew how much his kids meant to him. And I knew, and he told me just like his younger son, how like that was when he got off the road. That was when he moved over to NBA TV and stuff. So he was home all the time.
Yeah.
And so he's like, so I would take him to practices. I take him, here and there. And so like he worshiped me because I was always around. He's like my two older kids, like I was on the road, and they'd be like, I'll get ready to go on a road trip and I'm, trying to get a hug and a kiss. They're like, oh yeah, Dad, all right, bye. like yeah, do your thing. Okay. And so I was like, yeah, I don't necessarily want to be dad. I want to be around my kids and let them know that I'm a presence in their life. And so that's the type of thing that Sekou would just do. He was somebody that, could, and like I miss him all the time, like every day. We were on a text thread, me and a couple other guys. And so he would always come in with the comment that had everybody laughing, that could hold you through the day. And so not to have that voice, you feel that void. And so it's been tough, also because, we were around the same age and, you wonder, like, are you doing enough with your career? Are you doing enough with your life? Because I knew he was a great person. I didn't really know how he had connected with everybody else. I didn't know how everybody came away feeling about him. I knew how I felt about him, and now I'm fortunate that he opened up a spot for me to be in his life. I'm fortunate that we were able to have that connection because he went to Jackson State, I went to Florida A&M. We were two HBCU alums, and we started covering the league around the same time. And so coming up the ranks, together to kind of see him, sing and do his thing, it always was great. And he's somebody I talked to whenever I made career moves, just because I respected his opinion. And so, yeah, he's somebody that I miss all the time. But anybody that spent, I say, if you spend 5 minutes with him or 22 years with him, you're going to come away feeling better. And that's the one thing about Sekou is I knew that every time that I hung out with him, whether I was already in a good mood or if I was not feeling good about something, I knew that the minute that we parted ways, I felt better. Like, cause he could read the room. He could read how you were feeling, and he could just by being himself, make you feel better. And there aren't many people that have that kind of magic or that kind of gift, And so when you have those people in your life, you really cherish it. And when you don't have it, you really miss it.
Well, it's beautiful, man. Thank you. I'm glad you shared that very much. Like
Yeah.
you said, Brian and I did not know Sekou well at all, but the respect that he generated around the league and just the amount of people that really seem to think well of him and care about him, it really came through in the way he's been remembered.
Not many people get 100% approval rating, but it sounds like he did.
No, his Rotten Tomatoes is fantastic.
He's like the Ted Lasso of human beings. Everybody agrees on that.
Yeah. I mean, and I felt bad, like I was able to speak at or send a video clip during the funeral, and I'm mad now because I had tape. They said they wanted it to be like a minute, just 1 minute, just what you could, whatever you say about him in a minute. And when I recorded it, it was like 2 minutes, and I was like, and so I wound up cutting it in half. Like I found like the best minute and sent that. And then I watched everybody went like 2-3 minutes. Nobody went a minute because nobody could keep how they felt about him to a minute.
Yeah.
So I'm watching it. I'm like, oh man, I should have sent the entire thing because everybody else had a lot to say about him too. Because he was such a tremendous person that you couldn't really put a time limit on how you feel about him.
Yeah. Well, we're looking. We'll. It's like the director's cut. Like everybody, I'm sure all those people felt like they left stuff on the floor too that they could have included there. It is I believe 1:45.
Yeah.
Where you are. You are a fantastic person to agree to do this in the first place, and even more so
you are.
Well,
for staying
I think I sort
on.
of felt like I had to stay on because got on so late. So I apologize.
No,
again.
you didn't.
No.
You honestly didn't.
No, we apologize if we made you feel that way. Now we feel bad, but it's awesome as always, man. Catching up with you, we miss you, and
Yeah,
glad we were able to do this, man. This has been
yeah.
fun.
I look forward to head
Um,
out to LA at some point. I haven't been there I haven't been there since LeBron signed.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, it's been a
wow,
long
some
time
stuff's
since I've been
happening.
to LA. Yeah,
Yeah.
They won a title that you don't get to take credit for.
not at
You're
all.
not allowed to care about.
No, and I wrote about
Yeah.
it though. I wrote a couple stories about it.
Check
All right,
out
good
Michael's
enough.
work at the Washington Post. He's got a great story, by the way. We didn't have time to get into it, but I want to make sure people are aware about the NBA's efforts to make inroads in India that I thought was really fascinating, and also like how they've fallen a bit behind from where it seemed like they thought they might be with China. And that's obviously a sticky situation.
Yeah, so we actually
right
did tweet
now.
out earlier in the show, but we'll do it again tonight and into tomorrow. Tomorrow night, the Spinsters are going to be on the show, Jordan Liggins and Haley O'Shaughnessy.
Yeah.
And then next week, spring break, woo! We're taking a little time. We're going to keep, going to keep it tasteful and all that, but we're just going to take a little break. Michael Lee of the Washington Post, thank you again so much for doing it. Like Andy said, it's great to see you. Check out all this work over there, and we'll talk to you soon.
Thanks a lot.
Shout out
Shout
to Eddie Jones.
Also, shout out Bo Jackson.
Nice. There you go. Dank you, Nederland.
Oh, yeah, there you go.